Namaste everyone. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Welcome to our third session on the Bhagavad Gita. So in the first session, we covered how to study the Gita. In the second, we covered the first chapter, that is a Arjuna Vishada Yoga. And now we are going to cover the second chapter of the Gita, the second Adhyay, which is the Samkhya Yoga. However, as we all know, that whatever Krishna wanted to teach Arjun or tell Arjun has been completely covered in the second chapter, that is the Sankhya Yoga. It's a very big chapter, and just because Arjun had so many questions, the Gita goes up to the 18 chapters. So we, in our session, are going to divide it into three parts, and today we are going to talk on the Sankhya part. On the Buddhi Yoga and the Sthita Prajna part, we will go talk in our subsequent sessions. So, Nilesh, let me begin with a very powerful teaching of Bhagavan Krishna, Nainam Chindanti Shastrani. What a powerful shlok that is, and how wonderful this world will be if each one of us imbibes this, the indestructible nature of the Atma, that the Atma can never be destroyed by anything, and the Atma continues its journey from one body to another. So how wonderful will this world be? So my question to you is, how do we internalize this teaching of, it's a very deep teaching, it's a very deep fact, but a very powerful fact. And how do we internalize this into our day-to-day lives so that we become a better person, So that is one. And if you can, that is the first question. And the second is, if you can summarize the Sankhya for the audience, it will be great. So over to you, Nilesh.
Right. So second chapter, as Ashwini said, we are going to divide it into three parts. The first part today, we will do the Sankhya Yoga portion of it that is being discussed in Bhagavad Gita. Next time we will do Buddhi Yoga. And in the third part, we will go over the Sthita Prajna. When we get to those parts, we'll talk more in more detail. Sthita Prajna is a very unique contribution of Bhagavad Gita. Coming back to Sankhya Yoga, that is what we are going to discuss today. The discussion of Sankhya that is there in the second chapter is not the entire Sankhya that is discussed in Mahabharata or Kapila Muni's Sankhya Yoga or Sankhya Darshan. Okay. Here, Krishna is pulling from Sankhya the relevant portion that is required to deal with Arjuna's dilemma. Okay. So you said it, the Nainam Chindanti Shastrani. So one aspect of that is that we can call it in a simple language, the law of conservation of Prajna or Atma or Paramatma or consciousness. It never goes away. People can differ in terms of what different forms it takes place or how the reincarnation happens. There can be variation. There are a lot of variation. Say, for example, the way the Jainism, people within Jainism will think is not same as Buddhism, is not same as Hinduism. And Jainism, Hinduism are branches of Hinduism, sorry, Jainism and Buddhism. But the fact is, within Hinduism, there are 10 different ways, 10 different thinking, 10 different theories. One of the reasons why do we get these variations or various different way of looking at it? Because the knowledge is, this knowledge is achieved in an indirect means. Because unless you actually die and go there and figure it out what happens and then how you take birth, and assuming you remember, then only you can remember this. The point you said, what a great thing it will be if people remember that we are Atma and it never dies, the fearlessness that we may feel. Now, theoretically, that's easy to say. Of course, how to imbibe that in a practice. The one aspect of that, the other side of it, is to remember is that our body is going to die to come to that reality. And you said, what is the best way to imbibe it? I mean, there are great sages, great realized people who have tried in many different ways. And some people get it, other people take time. Even when we think we get it, we have to always find a way to remind ourselves. One quick story I will tell you is said in many variations, but this particular one in the life of Santa Eknath. from 16th century. He was at Pratishthan, Paitan, near Sambhajinagar in Maharashtra, on the bank of Godavari. One time, he was always, he's a Santa, he's always in a happy mood in spite of all the different dukkha that all of us have to go through. So one person ran into Santa Ekanathji and asked him, I have this question for you. All of us, most other people are always worried about something, some kind of anxiety, thinking about something. What is the secret that we always find you relaxed and happy, and in spite of all the different things that you have to, the torture that you have go through? Like, many people would not like what Santa Ekanath was doing because he was doing good. There is always a resistance. And Santa Ekanath said, that's a great question, my dear friend, but forget about me for a minute. But because of my tapasya, I have come to know something about you. In 7 days, exactly 7 days from today at the same time, you are going to die. And so he just touches the feet of Santa Ekanath, but he says, oh, well, it's very sad to hear. He's very worried and all that. But he says, let me go back to my family. So he goes back to the family. After 7 days are gone by and still he has not died. So now he wonders, Santa Ekanath, such a realized person, he predicted, I'm going to die in 7 days, and it did not happen. Let me go back and ask him. So he goes back to Santa Ekanath. He said, hey, I'm going to die. I'm here. He said, okay. Now Santa Ekanath said, now tell me, how did you live your last 7 days? Absolutely. And then I will not go into the detail, but I will leave it to the people's imagination, right? But he lived a very virtuous life, okay? Enjoyed, relished every single moment is spent with the friends, with the family members, what he did, how he took care of certain things, and he came to terms with his passing away. So even he became curious about what happens to a person after death and so on. So, everything that is required, he went through a crash course in 7 days. Yeah, go ahead.
So yeah, it must have been such a profound experience for him. So even we, like we as common mortals, if we have this concept of here and now, well, do what you have to do what is the right thing to do in whatever phase you are in life, in whatever stage you are in life, in whatever act you're in life, whatever relation, as a mother, father, brother, sister, as an employee, as a business person. And that's where we will get this rapture of living that we call, that's where we'll always be in a bliss. It is extremely difficult, as you said, but at least at the back of the mind, if every day in the morning we remind ourselves, look, I'm going to be around for eternity. My Atma is going to be around for eternity. So let me, so it's like, I'm in the human form. I'm a divine person to experience the human form. So I think we should, if we can keep telling ourselves this every day, every minute, I think maybe, we can be better human beings.
Yeah. And on the difficult part that you mentioned, and I must have said it, it's extremely difficult. Also, you mentioned this philosophy is very deep. Yes, it is deep, and internalizing this thing about the death, the inosmin yatha dehe kaumaryam yavanam jara, is also difficult. Having said that, while the philosophy is deep and imbibing these things is difficult, it's also important to realize that actually it is easy. And the easy meaning, to understand the philosophy is not difficult. Okay. And even to imbibe is, if you have that determination. Again, in the 6th chapter, Krishna and Arjun discussion, Arjun also says, but to control the mind is very difficult. And Krishna doesn't say it is not difficult. He says, yes, it is difficult, but abhyasa yoga yuktena, through study and through determination and through practice, you will achieve it. The reason I mentioned that is, like, just to bring some of the very minor examples, minor sounding examples. Now they may not be minor to people, but for example, you and me, like going back 4 years or so, starting into a 2-meal diet, just go back and think what we were thinking. In fact, we used to sit at the meal with all kinds of snacks and everything because we don't have a time to enjoy, but we don't want to feel hungry in between. But now just having 2 meals and eating nothing in between is a second nature to us. For example, we started fasting, before, like, think of what thoughts you might be going through, or anyone who, Water
Water
fast, yeah,
fast.
water fast,
Yeah.
36 plus hours water fast. And person would be saying, oh my God, how is it going to happen? Or suppose a few years down the road, we do say 72 hours fast. 36 is now we think, we do it. I mean, it can be done. But 72, oh my God, let me think about it. But there are many people who are doing it, right? So the point is, in a way, it is not difficult if you have a determination, if you have a abhyasa, you understand why it is to be done. So that is one point. And you want to go through Krishna's both ways, how he says, doesn't matter whether the Atma exists or not, you still fight.
Carry on.
Okay.
Carry on. You carry on. Yeah.
So the Sankhya part that Krishna is discussing here, it has to do so to not make complicated, it has to simply do with the fact that, hey, you know what, we have rented this body. I'm just making it a bit humorous, but we are not this body. We are a Chaitanya, pure Atma, okay? And all of us are. And to realize that is the first step. And how do we realize? That is what the second chapter will go through, the Buddhi Yoga and all that, how Sthita Prajna behaves, a realized person behaves, and so on. That realized person is also ordinary person like this. Just like Tukarama, once his realization comes, he says, Tuka mane ata khelato kautuke, zale tuze sukha antarbahya. He has realized that stage. He still has to live in the body. But the situation is such that it's like a ripe fruit, just hanging to the end of the tree, the branch or whatever it is, right? Ready to fall. And Dhaneshwar Maharaj describes it like that. So when that ripe fruit falls from the tree, there is no pain involved. It's only joy. Okay, the ripe fruit is just getting separated. That is his natural Swadharma. So that's the one. The one point I wanted to mention is, again, the reason you and me are doing this, it's not a substitute for people studying Bhagavad Gita. In fact, yes, our wish is that in some fashion, because people ask us how to study, so we are doing this. Our wish is that they take this to heart, they get some inspiration from this, and they take to the study of it and never give up. Okay, so they have to study it. But one interesting point that Krishna mentions, and in the context of Sankhya Yoga, that is important. Again, you asked me to describe the entire Sankhya Yoga. I'm not going to do it, or I will not able to do it. But Samkhya, in an Indian Darshana-Shastra, there is a understanding, or people think, people feel, and it is true to an extent, that there is a Ishwaravadi Samkhya and there is a Nirishwarvadi Samkhya. Like the ultimate acceptance of highest authority in some kind of God, like ultimate principle. God is again a wrong word, Bhagwan, Paramatma, Parabrahma, something like this. And then there are two types. One is a Nirishwarvadi Sankhya. The Sankhya doesn't have to accept the ultimate existence of a Bhagwan or something like this. There is a one kind of Sankhya like that. What Krishna is explaining is not that kind of Sankhya, but indirectly Krishna refers to both. And so what Krishna is saying, and we'll look at few verses there, but what Krishna is saying is, because Dainosmin yathadaya kaumaryam yavanam jara, tatha dehantara prapti dhiras tatrana muhyati, this we are changing we moving from one body to another, one life to another, is like we going from the child, infant, to a youth, to a mature person, to old age and disease and death. Okay, just like we go through that transition, Atma also goes through one body to another body. When one body is left, it takes the next body, and then it goes into discussion. And then he says, then Krishna says, so okay, so Atma is Amar, Atma is never destroyed. So where is the need for any worry? Just do your Swadharma, go fight your Kshatriya Dharma, do it. But he also says, think of that as a Nirishwarvadi, or even if somebody doesn't accept reincarnation in a mental state, right? He says, suppose there is no incarnation. This is the only lifetime, for example. Even then, so now what are your choices? I mean, otherwise live a miserable life, suddenly not fighting here, which is the right thing to do, Swadharma, or fight. And then he says, if you die while fighting, what a great thing for Kshatriya, you will go to Swarga, right? And if you win, then you're going to enjoy the earth. So either combinations, either outcomes, there is nothing to be depressed about, nothing to be despondent about, right? And so Krishna's way is a third way. That's why it's called Murare Tritiya Pantha. Krishna, actually, I'll show you after you discuss when Arjuna is asking a specific question, in a way Krishna is responding, but Krishna does not go to the level of Arjun or the despondency level of Arjun, despondent state of Arjun to answer, which is like what people say. If you want to solve a problem, you have to get above that level to solve the problem, any problem. And that's what Krishna is doing. Krishna sometimes reads between the lines or just ignores the specific question that Arjuna is asking, although he's answering that question, and we will see some examples of that. But back to you.
Yeah, in fact, the Nirishwarvad that you said reminded me of one shlok, na kartutvam na karmani, that Krishna says, which means he says that it's not me who decides your karma. It's not me who decides one's karma or one's fruit of that karma. It is your own prakriti that decides, what you will do. So in that sense, it is Nirishwarvad. He's not saying that I am the one who decides everything. Correct. It is you, your Atma, your prakriti, Uddharen Atman Atmanam, that's what decides everything. So in that sense, it is also Nirishwarvadi at some places, there are many more. And as you rightly said, Samkhya, or in fact, Bhagavad Gita has shown me so many shloks which describe the Atma. In some sense, even so many cannot describe what is really the Atma. So it's very difficult for you and me to summarize it in one session, because even the Gita with 700 shloks has been trying to help us understand what an Atma is,
Correct.
It is that deep in some sense, but also not difficult to understand if one really, kind of reads and learns and practices it day in and day out, Imbibing, internalizing is very important, I think.
Correct. And
just reading and reading it is not, Shraddha, of course, imbibing, internalizing is very important. Otherwise, most of the people will read it and say, oh, this is beyond me. I cannot, I cannot
fathom. Right. So I think that it is difficult. Not only difficult, it is impossible to describe Atma. Is it one? When it is omnipresent and everything, right? So is it one? Is it multiple? Is your Atma in you is same as me? And if it is same, then how does it work? How do we behave in different way? If we are multiple ones, is it like the Atma is sliced into small things? I mean, in some ways, Krishna has tried to answer that. Mamai Vansho, Jiva Loke, Jiva Bhuta, Sanatana, and so on. But this is to be taken on a Shraddha. Okay. I mean, the journey must begin with a Shraddha. In fact, if you're okay, I would share quickly a couple of slides. Do you want to ask anything else?
Just one last point that I want to say is that, like you talked about the fast that we do, water fast, 36 hours, 48 hours. That's one of the tools to understand Samkhya, is what I was going to say. One of the so many tools, because we are basically getting detached. Niraharasya dehinah. So once we get detached from the body and the body needs, we probably go internal and try to understand the Atma, the journey of the Atma.
Right.
Possibly it's one of the tools.
Correct.
Yeah, go ahead.
Right. And as we go through the future chapters, it really helps. I mean, these kind of, let's call it sadhana, for lack of better name. These are experiments. That is that Abhyasa Yoga Yuktena. They allow you to understand, like, what is Ahankar, what is Asakti, the difference between Ahankar and Asakti, what is the subtle differences between Kama, Krodha, Lobha. Sometimes they feel very closer to it. Quickly, I just ended up creating a slide I created for something else, but I think that actually fits very well here too. So I thought, I'll just share that. Again, we are just going to do the first part of Samkhya, but I was just showing, how it goes. So Shraddha, so think of this as the rail tracks, Shraddha and Pradnya. Both are required for a balance, which is a Sanyam or Samyak, sama travel of a train. That is that Sthita Pradnya life. That is to think of a third part. Shraddha is what we are today looking at, because Krishna gives the descriptions about the Atma and how Atma transfers through the body and reincarnation and so on. But because that involves knowing something that we cannot know from at the experiential level in our current life, therefore it needs to be taken on a Shraddha. It should begin with a Shraddha. Eventually it will go to Pradnya, which is the Buddhi Yoga we'll do the next time. But last time, Ashwini, I discussed how the first chapter and some portion of the second chapter, Arjuna is raising many questions, justifying his not fighting. And as we said, you said it, that second chapter is a complete by itself, and actually it gives all the answers, and it ends with a Brahma Nirvan, right? So what I've done is I've taken few Sanskrit shlok, and also the Marathi Gita, from the Gita verses. Those who understand Marathi, they will also able to quickly refer to this, but you and me can give a crude translation. So think of some of the questions from the first chapter, first adhyay. So he's saying there, Siddhanti mama gatrani, mukham, you can do that, mukham cha parishishyati. And in Marathi Gita, Shariri Sutato Kampa Ube Romancha Rahati. He's describing his situation. He cannot hold the Gandiva Dhanusha and so on. Or he doesn't see any good coming out of this. He's seeing everything bad, signs, and he says there is no point doing this. I don't see anything good coming out of it by killing your own. Or he says, therefore, I don't think it's appropriate to kill the relatives. Okay. And how can I become happy? Now, if you see on the other side, when we go to the second chapter, and I'm just pulling few specific ones, Krishna responds to those one-on-one, but not by going to the level of Arjun. So, for example, when Arjun says, my body is sort of going through kampan, he's not saying, oh, kampan is okay, except no. He says, Swadharma tohi pahuni. So, Swadharma papi chaveksha na vikampitum arhasi. So focus on the Swadharma, and that Vikampan that you are showing is not acceptable. Not acceptable. And then when he says, I don't see anything good coming out of this, to that he is responding saying, this is a Dharma Yuddha. And there is nothing better for a Kshatriya than a Dharma Yuddha. So he's responding, but not by going to Arjuna's level. This is very important, sort of a lesson for all of us. When somebody is asking a question, we go to that person's levels, that person's level of intellect, then actually it becomes more confusing. We have to almost say that person, no, you are making this presumption, second presumption, third presumption. Those first two presumptions are wrong. I'm just giving as an example. Then only you can make that person understand. Because many times, it is my experience, and I feel very frustrated at times. I will not recognize that I have to clear some background wrong understanding of that person before giving the answer. So if I just give you the answer, the person says, but that's not an answer. Quickly, it says, therefore, it's not correct. And he's saying, it's such a powerful thing. By just what a great fortune that you have got such a great opportunity to do the Dharma Yuddha. And there is nothing better than that for Kshatriya. Quickly, I'll go one, and then I'll let you conclude. Similarly, there are many other questions or situations. General, you can say the doubts in Arjuna's mind about the papa, about the bad things that he is doing by actually going to fight. So for example, even if they are not, there is no good relationship between the Kaurava. Okay, still, if I'm killing them, I'm killing somebody. That's what he's saying there. And just because they don't understand, that is understandable, but why should I do the same thing? So he's equating those both parties, right? And therefore, I think this is a papa, this is a bad thing, and I want to avoid it. And if you look on the other side from the second chapter, when Krishna is saying this, again, he repeats, which is the same verse I'm quoting, that this is what a great opportunity for you. That's why you should do it. Swadharma, therefore you should do it. And then Krishna gets at the key message of Bhagavad Gita, which is those last two verses there on the page, like 38 and 50. Sukha dukkhe same krutva, having that samyak buddhi, the balanced buddhi. And again, the last one, which is I'm pulling from Buddhi Yoga. We may not have to discuss that today, but samatva buddhi. Like in my mind, if based on, of course, the study of my study of Bhagavad Gita from many great gurus, nothing of my own per se. If in one word you have to say the summary of a Bhagavad Gita, it is that samatva buddhi. Okay, so I'll give it back to you and you can conclude.
Yeah, in fact, there are so many times that Krishna tells Arjun, get up and fight, get up and fight. He says, if you win the war, you will rule the world. If you die in the war, you will get heaven. So, hato va praksasi swargam jitva va bhukshase mahim. And so, he stresses on the Swadharma. or the karma yoga at every stage. There is something I came to my mind, but I missed it. I'm missing it right now, but that's okay. Maybe the next time. Yeah, one more thing I want to tell for the audience is actually Krishna's teachings start from verse 11, Ashochananva Shochastvam of the second chapter. That's where actually his teachings start, where he starts giving sermons, or, starts teaching Arjun, teaching Samkhya and so on and so forth till the 18th chapter. So that's where chapter 2, verse 11 is the beginning of the teaching of Bhagavan Krishna. That's what I wanted to summarize.
Correct. And I just wanted to point out, not that I know the alternate correct word, but how much we sort of get into the English and the language. Like you said, that's where 2.11 is when the sermon begins. I don't know if sermon is like a true, even as a translation can be used as a dharmic word, just like we should not use the word soul and sacrifice and things like that, right? But we use it. Huh?
Yeah. Even
God, exactly. And how many times I use the word God, right? But this is a slow process. And I think as long as we are conscious and we don't get too crazy about it either, because at the end of the day, we are communicating in English to reach many people, right? But we have to be aware and slowly clean the language, like what Jeffrey has done with his Gita Comes Alive, the radical translation of Bhagavad Gita. All right, unless you have anything, we can stop here. And next time we will start with part 2 of 3 for the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita.
Yes. We are all good. I think, thank you everyone for your patient hearing. And Jagadamba, Jagadamba, Jagadamba.